Guys and girls, we just flipped the script on how you write Terraform code and how you tell stories about your infrastructure. Whether you're like an individual developer hacking away with Claude Code or Cursor and like vibing, and you want to host that in like an environment because you've actually got some traction, you built something cool and now you need to host it, but you want to do it right and you don't know how to use infrastructure as code. Or you're an enterprise employee and you've got massive code bases that you have to maintain, hundreds of modules or tons of complexity across multiple cloud environments. This agent is able to work with you where you are. It can be a teacher, it can be an advisor, it could be a co-developer, but it lets you focus on the business value. What are the security baselines? What is the actual thing we're trying to solve for? I'm going to help you write the infrastructure to do that. You could be as plain English or as detailed in your intent as you want to be with this thing. So I want to dive right in and just do a show and tell of infracodebase.com. I jumped into a project. Every project is an infinite canvas where you can work in real time with your team. And now that team is extended to include your agent, which is right here at the bottom, integrated into the product. You press Command I to open this or close this, right? To look at like what the actual conversation is that's going on. I'm just going to go ahead and get things started by kindly greeting our helper here. Hey, how you doing? All right, what would I like to create today? Let's see. Let's build a function app plus key vault plus storage in Azure. We'll start with something pretty straightforward, right? A very common pattern in Microsoft Azure is that you're going to create a function app. It's going to expose like an API for you. And you're going to have a storage to put all of its config in, and then you're going to have a key vault to hold secrets that you're going to need to use inside of the application whenever you're running those APIs. So this thing is built to think like an engineer. So it starts out by looking at like, what resources do I need to create? Okay, now what resources actually exist in the Terraform provider that I'm working with? Okay, and then it does its documentation research, right? So it's looking at like function app, it's looking at storage account, yada, 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 doing its work, right? It's also just double checking, validating the Terraform versions, the provider versions. It's starting from a point of view of, I want to get it right. I want to know what the real stuff that I need is to produce working code at the end of this process. So now that it's confident and it's gathered all the information that it needs, it's going to do what we would do and start developing against those documentation. Now that took us about a minute to go through that whole process of making sure all of that was accurate. Normally that could take you quite some time, right, to go through. And typically as a developer, you'd have your IDE up on one side, your docs up on the other side. You don't need to do that anymore. In fact, I'm going to show you how once this thing creates this visually on the canvas for us, how we build it and how you can use the docs from HashiCorp right inside the product. So let's take a look at it. So what it's doing right now is it's actually writing the files that it needs to support our development. Over here inside of the code editor, you can actually watch it creating the files as it's going through and writing them. And here it's actually realized that the Azure Function App is deprecated and Linux Function App is the preferred resource that we should be using. And you can see here on the canvas that it actually used that resource. And here you can see the files. So if I were to go into main and I can press Command I again to bring that down, you can see all of the code that's been generated for this, right? This is just a starter kit. I picked something simple for us to do to make this a quick and easy demo. But you could provide as much context or as little context as you want. It's going to work with you on that. So right now it's going through, it's making sure that everything is legit. It deleted that extra Terraform file that was generated by the product when we first created our workspace. And it's running some commands to be able to make sure that the infrastructure is actually valid right now. So I'm going to go ahead and close that down. And while it's doing some of that work and we can see it thinking down here, we're going to start designing what this looks like. Now, maybe you're not an architect and you're like, I don't know how to do it. What's related to what? How does it work? Well, because we're using Terraform, we have these implicit dependencies between resources. Now, usually that looks like a Terraform graph, which is ugly. And you've probably seen some like automated outputs for cloud infrastructure plans, and it's not good, right? But here you get a really clean way of interfacing with this. For example, if I click on my Linux function app or my service plan, I can see that my service plan has a relationship to the resource group. I can just drag that in. I can also see that the Linux function app belongs inside of that app service plan. All right, so I've effectively resolved all of those relationships. And now let's say I want to take the key vault next, right? The key vault is using this current client config to get its tenant ID. So I'm just going to connect those up, get rid of that ghost edge. I'm going to bring it into the resource group to continue to clean this up a bit. I'll move this out. And then we have this access policy that's connected to the key vault as well. And it's also, and it doesn't actually have to be inside of the resource group as far as I can tell, but let's go ahead and do that. And then it's also got a relationship to this. It's using more data from this current client configuration from within the environment. And finally, the Linux function app is also an input to this policy, right? So we're going to connect that to faithfully represent those relationships between the key vault and the function app and this access policy to that function app. Now you can see as we click through this that here's the storage account, and the storage account has a connection to the Linux web app here. So we're just going to go ahead and connect those up. And now we have a faithful representation of what this infrastructure actually looks like. Now, you could extend this and keep going, and you could like change the code and do this in iteration. So already by default, you can see this. If you're familiar with Terraform, you can see that this is pretty well written. Blocks come, the right kind of blocks come first. Like what you would expect as a developer is in here, right? And if I wanted to extend this, I might say something like, can you add like private endpoints for these services? So we'll ask it to do that, and it's going to go through the same process again. It's going to think about, if I want to secure these resources behind a virtual network, what am I going to need? That's its internal thoughts. And then it says, okay, if that's what I need, does that exist? And should I create it? Can I create it? And so right now it's going through this process one more time of saying, okay, make sure like what resources exist. I'm going to get the documentation for the things that I need. And then I'm going to actually start creating the stuff onto the canvas. And so just a moment, it should start editing files. So you'll see that it's going to give you a little bit of an update, like what it's going to do. It says, I'll add a private endpoints to the storage account and key vault, along with the necessary networking infrastructure. Let me update the configuration. If we come over here to the main.tf file, it may add a new network.tf file, and it may extend the main.tf file. Usually the shorter main is, the more likely it is to append to main. The longer it is, the more likely it is to go and like create an entirely new file to try to keep things more well organized. So you can see here that it added in the virtual network, the private endpoints, subnets, and all the different things that we would need for this infrastructure. I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'm also going to reclaim a little bit of real estate with Command I, and I'm going to just take a look at what we've got. So it created a virtual network. This virtual network has 2 subnets. So we'll go ahead and bring these onto the canvas. Perfect. And then this virtual network, as you can see, it belongs inside of this resource group. So we'll go ahead and drag that into that resource group. Now, if we take a look at what it's currently working on, it's still editing the code a little bit. So it'll go through and it'll add the private endpoints, the virtual network connections. And so you can see here that it's went ahead and added that service virtual network Swift connection to our architecture. And it'll continue to work through like this until it has everything that it needs and that it can plan, and everything is going to be deployable to your environment. So we actually have all these additional resources now that I can start to pack in here, right? So we have a key vault private endpoint. So that private endpoint will probably go into the private endpoint subnet. Similar for the storage private endpoint, that probably goes over here. And then you could say, connect these things up. Let's see if there's another private endpoint. I think so. So then this like private endpoint for the key vault might point from the key vault to the private endpoint. And then same thing for the storage account, probably point that to this storage account, right? And then we can see that we also have a key vault private DNS zone that's connected to that key vault. So we'll bring that down here. And you can continue like this, right? So I don't have to build the whole thing, but the very important thing for you to see is that the AI can create these objects for you. It can write the code that you know is going to plan and you know is going to apply. It follows your instructions and understands your intent, and it collaborates with you on how to build what you want to build. And here at the end, you can see that validate succeeded and our infrastructure was successful. And we're going to get a final report out here. So it's formatted the code to make sure it's perfect. And now it's telling us what it did with this network infrastructure. It's saying it added virtual networks, configured in this way, private endpoints for these specific things, DNS resolution for these things, security features. And you can ask it to continue to iterate. What's the one thing you would do next? Like, is this good enough? Should I consider more, right? And it can advise you and help you along this journey of doing your cloud infrastructure. So rather than sit here and you watch me do an entire design, I want to encourage you to sign up. I want to encourage you to get in and give this a try. If you're wanting to break into the space, if you're coming out of college and you want to get into the cloud, you want to get into development, platform engineering is a lot of like infrastructure as code, right? And Terraform is the preeminent configuration language in the industry. You can use this product to learn Terraform, to learn architecture. And then I encourage you to learn to tie that back to business imperatives. Like, what is the thing we're building? Why are we building it? Who are we building it for? If you can tell that message between that and this, you can get a job anywhere as a newbie out of college. As an enterprise customer, you know how messy this is. You know how complicated your modules are, how many resources you have in your configurations, how often the code gets out of sync with the actual design that you've built. This helps you bring all that together, tell your story, and move in a collaborative and aligned way so that you can meet your business partners where they are and get this work done in a week, not 12 weeks, right? We want to help you solve big problems on this platform. If you use it and you give us feedback, I guarantee you, we are going to get back to you. Thank you so much for your consideration. I really hope you enjoyed the demo, and I'm really looking forward to your feedback in the comments on social media. And sharing this would mean the world to us because we're working on building a business, and we think this is a great idea, and we hope you think it's a great idea too. We want to make it great with you. All right. Have a great day, guys.